So welcome to Denver.
Thank you.
So it's 40th anniversary
Mhm.
of Garfield. Big deal. You've been doing this for that long. How do you keep the character, all the characters relevant to the times?
hmm It's interesting as far as the gag writing over 40 years. If anything, it becomes easier. Mort Walker, who did Beetle Bailey, said writing gags when he got started was like walking into a dark pantry and taking a gag off a shelf and using it. He never knew how big the pantry was. He said, you know what? It's infinite. So the more I get to know Garfield, the easier it is because he writes his own material these days. I know him so well. All I have to do is consciously put him into a situation, hanging from a tree limb or looking out the window, and I just watch. And when he does something funny, I back up 3 frames and I cut it off. So I don't write for him anymore, I edit. And so if anything, when you're dealing with broad topics like eating and sleeping as well, you know, the materials is infinite.
How have you seen him evolve over the 40 years?
Garfield has evolved more physically than he has emotionally over 40 years. He's still sleepy, lazy, loves to eat, and he always will be. But he is more expressive than he used to be. Newspaper comic strips got smaller during a newsprint shortage, so I made his eyes and his mouth bigger so people could literally see him, you know, see the expressions because they help drive the gag. So his limbs are longer because of animation, it allows him to do more and move better. So he's changed quite a bit in that respect. I will say that his relationship with Odie has warmed up a little bit. It's more of a brother kind of relationship. Garfield still kicks him off the table, but he'd be the first to come to Odie's defense if someone else did. But aside from that, he still pretty much has the attitude. He resents authority, which gives him the cool factor. And he's outspoken about, you know, controversial things like Mandys and raisins.
So you talked about Odie and Garfield's relationship. How do you think that Garfield and John's relationship has changed over time?
It's interesting with the way Garfield and John communicate, because John can't literally hear Garfield, but Garfield, through his expressions, gestures, and things like that, really is pretty good at communicating. Early on, I gave John a roommate, Lyman, so that he'd have someone to talk to, not realizing that Garfield and John could communicate so efficiently. So my biggest mistake was letting Lyman kind of fade out of the strip, never really explaining where he went. And to this day, 40 years later, people are still saying, whatever happened to Lyman?
Have you ever thought of bringing him back?
I've thought of bringing Lyman back at times. I actually addressed it in the Garfield show. I had Garfield and John on, they were on a safari in Africa and finding out that Lyman had gone there and was doing goodwill work with folks living in the jungle there, and that's why he hadn't come back. So maybe that'll get the kids off my back.
So over the 40 years, is there anything that you think that you would have done differently? Do you feel like everything is kind of progressed as you always saw it progressing?
If I could go back and change one thing about Garfield, it would be actually a decision I made right before the strip was syndicated. I'd been trying for 9 years to get a comic strip started. Finally, I had done Garfield, I had drawn him, but he had no stripes at the time on my submission to the newspaper syndicate who eventually contracted him. So I get a call, and the president of the syndicate said, I would like to syndicate Garfield. I said, as in sign a contract, pay me money, put it in the papers, syndicate? He goes, yes. He said, however, he said, I've often thought, what would it be like if Garfield had stripes? And I said, stripes! That's brilliant, of course. And so I added stripes, got the contract signed, but now after 40 years, I can't tell you how many millions of stripes I've had to draw on Garfield as a result of that one little suggestion. So I would have him be a nice orange cat, but stripeless.
Yes. So you built an empire with this character I mean, there's the comic strip that's been going for 40 years. There's the different animated series. I remember Garfield and Friends from when I was growing up.
Yes.
And it's since become live action / CGI movies and all of that. What is next?
Okay.
What do you see as next for this?
What we have planned for Garfield coming down the road is yet another movie. Now this one's going to be all CGI, all computer generated, no live action this time, but it's we're working on the second draft right now. It'll be another 4 years before that one's done because it's CGI, it takes a long time to animate. We're working on the 6th season for the Garfield show. This one's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be, as opposed to CGI, it's going to be 2D with 3D software driving it, so they move very realistically. But the big difference is it will be done in 30-second shorts, themed for 5 shorts together for a 2.5-minute segment. So we could use it on social media, we can use it for broadcast, and there's no dialogue. Picture Pink Panther, only this one's Orange Cat. And so it's a lot of physical humor, and it's been great fun to work with. We're going to be doing about 240 30-second segments to begin with, and that'll start probably about a year from now in broadcast. We're doing a musical. It's for youth theaters, schools, and things like that. Rodgers and Hammerstein's publishing that. It came out just last year. So we're doing a lot of things on a lot of fronts. In China, we're working on 2 theme parks with 6 Flags. And Garfield and Odie will be the themed characters for the family sections of those parks. So it's keeping us off the streets.
What is it about this character that just makes him so timeless, that has kept him going for the 40 years, that has let him branch out, that is still garnering new fans to this day?
Garfield still resonates with readers today after 40 years, I think, for 2 good reasons. One, he's a cat. People love cats. But more importantly, he deals with eating and sleeping. Now, I submit 40 years from now, people are still going to be eating and sleeping. Plus, he has some very popular opinions on life. He hates Mondays. We have about 17 million fans on Facebook. Every Monday, he hates Mondays. Every Monday, we get our most likes and our most shares. You can't hate Mondays too much. Yeah. He does like to sleep in. He does like, dessert. But he's cool with that. He's pleased with himself. And I think, if anything, it relieves our guilt a little bit because we're made to feel guilty for that. So, more often than not, when you laugh at a Garfield gag, it's because you're saying, "Isn't that true?" So if he touches him, then hence the resonance and the fact that he resents authority, as represented by his owner John. It gives him a little bit of a cool factor with the younger readers as well.
So John and Liz gotten together. That's been a long time coming. Do you see that? How do you see that relationship progressing?
After I'd been doing Garfield for 25 years, we made a conscious effort to reach out to the fans, the collectors, everybody we could talk to and say, okay, Garfield's been doing this for 25 years. What's he not doing? What would you like to see? What's not working? What is working? And it was interesting. Over the top, the one comment was, give John a life. And the example most of them used was, it was a shame that Charlie Brown never got to kick that football. Please don't let that happen with John and Liz. So, yeah, I thought, John had desperately been trying to get a date for 25 years. In fact, I'd about done all the desperate trying to get a date gags I could think of. So I thought, okay, we'll let the relationship, mature. Let him get a date, and so that's growing. But if it takes him 25 years to get a date with her, I can't imagine how long it's going to take before they go to they take the next step. So I'm the last person to say. One day I may be writing and they decide. And like I say, I don't make Garfield do things. I watch him do things and I write it down. So, but I think it'll be quite some time.
Now, from a overall business standpoint, how have you seen comic strips change over the 40 years?
It's interesting. When I got started with Garfield in 1978, we're 41 newspapers at the time. Humor was very simple. It was innocent. There was no internet. And Garfield was a bad boy, you know. He hated Mandys. He burped. And he was a bad boy. And then along came Bart Simpson, you know, don't have a cow, man. And he was the bad boy. And then along came Beavis and Butthead. Then along came South Park. Then along came, pretty soon, Garfield is now mom approved. But he never changed. The landscape shifted in front of him. So he's still the same cat that he was, but you're right. The sensitivities of the readers and the young readers are much different than they were in 1978. So as a result, also because of the internet, there were only like 300 cartoonists back then because there were only so many newspapers, so much space on the comics page. Now we have the internet. So if you draw one cartoon and your mom likes it, you're a cartoonist. So then maybe there are 300 million cartoonists now. And but don't get me wrong, we're looking over our shoulders at these kids because a lot of them are really good. But because it's the internet and there's not that censorship, I'll say, or that sensitivity on the parts of newspapers at play, they're dealing with a lot broader subject matter, and so stuff is more textual, you know, today than it was. But it's all good. It's all high energy. Cartooning's alive and well, and I couldn't be happier about it.
That's awesome. So, from a personal standpoint, what's next for you?
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. After 40 years, honestly, it's been like a finger snap since I got started. And in many ways, I'm still trying to get it right. Still trying to improve the drawing, you know, working on the timing. I'm still waiting for that one gag that makes the whole world laugh too. It's out there somewhere. I'm gonna get it. So, as far as the comic strip, I'm not going anywhere. I think for as long as I'm funny, you know, as long as I'm really contributing to the humor, I want to do this. And then maybe somebody else could do it someday if they're, you know, because I think Garfield really does serve a purpose in that balancing the scales a little bit against some of the very real, often depressing things going on in media, politics, economy, war, all the other stuff going on. We lighten things up a little bit. So I'll probably slow down on all the, you know, the business, you know, end of it at some point, but I'll always do the comic strip as long as I can.
Awesome. So I understand that you don't do a lot of Comic-Cons. So
No.
Why Denver? Why come to Denver?
I've not done a lot of Comic-Cons. I've got, you know, I'm rather busy with travel and a lot of other fronts and doing lots of things, but I've done the San Diego Comic-Con. That was a ball. But the thing about the Denver Comic-Con, you've got this educational angle to it. You've got the thing about literacy. You've got all these other things going on, as well as being a Comic-Con, you know, attracting the comics fans and things like that. And this is where entertainment's headed as well, thanks to the internet and thanks to the way entertainment's going. It's like exploding. And the people who follow the comics are, and this is according to research, they're able to draw abstract relationships in that, to look at a drawing and relate it to real life. To do that, you need a little higher than average intelligence, and the people are very engaging. And so this is a great place to be talking about education, the good things you can do with the comics, and the good causes that are out there to be served. I really like that, and I admire that about the Denver Comic-Con.
And you've been to Denver before?
I have been to Denver before. It was, I was telling you stories. It was so long ago. It was a set like this. I was just getting mic'd up. They broke into the broadcast to say President Reagan had just been shot.
Oh.
It was that long ago, okay? So I took the microphone off. They say, why are you doing that? I said, you think they're going to come back to an interview with me with presidents, you know, had an assassination attempt? And so, and because of the local impact of the, you know, the circumstances around that. And so it's been a while.
Are you going to be spending some time here this trip, or is it basically like a here and gone?
we'll be here a few days, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of the other authors, and we're going to be meeting some more of the fans and things like that for a couple of more days. But then be back onto other things. With the 40th anniversary, the cat's keeping me really busy these days.
What is the biggest thing planned for the 40th anniversary at this point?
I would say the biggest affair planned around the 40th anniversary is going to be in Hong Kong, their largest mall. There'll be an art show by 40 artists, many from China, but several from around the world. And there'll be a big celebration there. I'll be there to kick it off. So it's rather an elaborate affair, but there have been some wonderful things planned in other markets around the world as well. For me, I'm looking forward to our plans with the staff back in Indiana, and we're going to eat and then take the afternoon off, which is a very Garfield thing to do. Play a little golf, we'll hit the pool. It's going to be lie in a sunbeam, scratch. Nice. I'm really looking forward to that.
So we asked on Facebook for people to submit a few questions.
Okay.
We got a couple. We also had a post from someone who is a very big Garfield collector, and she even included a picture. And she was very excited to meet you again. But so Tina asks, why is Garfield obsessed with lasagna? She says no judgment, as it's her obsession as well.
Garfield is obsessed with lasagna because I love lasagna. As it turns out, though, the joke's on me. I thought when I created the strip, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if a cat liked a human food, if he liked lasagna, because I love it. And I immediately started getting letters from owners of cats saying, my cat loves lasagna too. Well, as it turns out, cats do love lasagna, whether it's the cheese or the meat in it or something. So, like I say, the joke was on me.
A man named Jeff said he and his late wife loved Garfield, and he still does. The best series of strips he does is with Garfield whacking the spider.
Yes.
So what was the impetus behind that series of gags?
Garfield's been whacking spiders for as long as I can remember, because he, as opposed to some other characters, has likes and dislikes. So he hates raisins, he hates Mandys, and I thought he's going to hate spiders too. It's just to give him something for physical gags, because humor comes from conflict. If everybody agreed, everybody looked and acted the same, there'd be no humor whatsoever. So you need a dog to kick off the table, you need opposites, you need conflict. So I gave him spiders. And if that's as controversial as Garfield gets, but as it turns out, I actually heard from the Friends of Arachnids. True story.
That's a real thing?
Yes, it's a real thing. And so I guess Garfield is a bit controversial.
Jim asked what your best recipe for lasagna is.
Okay. Believe it or not, my taste in lasagna is really pedestrian, because Mom always fixed it, and my favorite lasagna has always been the Good Housekeeping recipe for lasagna. Plenty of extra ricotta cheese doesn't hurt either. But yeah, the cheeses now Italian sausage maybe, as opposed to ground beef maybe, but good Italian spices, the chopped tomatoes, everything that you do with a normal lasagna. And I think why mess with something if it works,
And then finally, Julia asked, how do you feel about Mondays?
Believe it or not, I love Mandys. I look forward to Mandys. It was an exercise to imbue a character with strong opinions so that I could contrast the other characters from him. I perceived that most people didn't care for Mandys because that's the day you go back to school. That's the day you go back to work, So I thought, okay, we'll give him that. And then I let John enjoy Mandys and stuff so we could play off those things. So, but I look forward to it. Doing the strip gets me out of bed. It's great work if you can get it.
I love the fact that even after all this time, you're still super passionate about it, about the character, everything. So I appreciate your time.
No, that's
It's
not a
been
problem.
A blast
Yeah,
talking with you.
it's easy to talk about what you do.
Yeah.
If I interviewed you about interviewing, you'd like go on and on and on. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You
If
bet.
you don't mind,